river of Beijing. So it has over 800 years of history. After the bridge has been witnessed wars and vast changes over time, that still stands today. And these stone blocks, which was standing on this bridge, we have seen some of the tracks which were imprinted by the ancient cargoes. And in the Lugou Bridge, there are stone lines dotted across the two sides of the bridge. And this is also a very important tourist spot in Beijing, where a lot of citizens would come here and enjoy the moon in August. This is a bridge also witnessed the vast pain and scars of the Chinese war of resistance against the Japanese aggression. On June 7th, 1937, the Japanese troops attacked the Lugou Bridge. It is a crucial access point to Beijing. Today we are here to look back at what happened 85 years ago. We have also invited a local historian from the Fengtai district, Mr. Zhang Guozhi, to give us a feedback, to give us a look back toward what happened 85 years ago. I am born and bred Fengtai people. Lugou Qiao is a local tale and a local story that has been shared by a lot of Fengtai locals. I have been educated in around and near the Lugou Qiao. I lived across the Lugou Bridge. To the west of Lugou Bridge, there is a small town which is called Ma'anshan town. So how far away from your home to this bridge? I think it takes 1 hour's work to reach this bridge. When you were a kid, what is the local story about Lugou Qiao Bridge? And after you have become a local governmental historian, can you give us a brief introduction about the Lugou Bridge incident after the incident occurred? On 1937, July the 7th, the area around the Lugou Bridge was actually controlled by the Japanese troops by three sides. At that time, Beijing was not called Beijing, it was called Beiping. A lot of Japanese troops stationed here to do the military drills. And I still remember what happened. And 85 years ago, the Chinese veterans still remembered what happened at that night. Dear viewers, we have given you a brief introduction and also a view toward the sceneries around the Lugou Bridge. Let's go back to what is happening on the Lugou Bridge to listen to historian Zhang to give us a description toward what happened 85 years ago. So you can see the train is actually passing parallel to Lugou Bridge. It was called the Pingtan Road. The Pingtan Road. It is a route connecting Beijing to Hankou at that time. This is a bridge, this is actually a route which was built in 1895. Later on, we have built the Beijing-Hankou Railway alongside the Lugou Bridge. So here at my hand, I have a photo which was shot by the Japanese troops back in 1937. This is a photo that their airplane had taken for the military observation. So we are sitting at the heart of the Lugou Bridge. To its east, it is a temple of the Pingcheng. It was a military stronghold at that time, and it was built, a military stronghold which was built in the Ming Dynasty to prevent the invasion of the Mongolian armies. At 1937, this is a gateway connecting Beijing to the Mongolia region of China. In 1928, when Beiping's name was changed into Beijing, this area, the Yongji city, has been migrated to around Beijing. It is still a very important military gateway connecting the on-site region to Beijing. To its north, it is the Pinghan Railway, a major artery in the northern part of China. And here I am actually pointing to the Pinghan Railway, connecting Beiping to Hankou in the Hubei province. In the historic record, we have a nickname which is called Bridge City, 2 bridges, 1 city. That is referring to the 2 bridges, the Lugou Bridge as well as the Jinghan Bridge, and also the Wanping County. So if you have the military strongholds of the Lugou Bridge and Wanping City, as a military strategy, you can attack and you can also safeguard the city. And if the Japanese troops occupy the Lugou Bridge, it is going to cut the communications between the city of Beijing and also the southern part of China, because it is a major artery connecting the Beijing and also the southern part of China. So this is also a very important military move during the Chinese people's resistance against the Japanese aggression. So what led to the July the 7th incidents? Before the July the 7th, the Japanese troops has been stationed in the Fengtai district for a long time, and they had this intention for a long time. In 1936, Japanese troops launched 2 incidents. One was happened on March the 6th. Another was happened on the 18th of September. In 1936, the Japanese troops actually controlled the Fengtai district. Its next military move is going to cut the communication between the Beijing city with the external world. That's the reason why they have also stationed in the city of Beijing. It is also being done to control the Beijing's safety.
So we need to stop the Japanese troops from attacking the North China. So after we took the Wanping city, we cut the advancement of the Japanese troops. So the taking of Wanping city by Japanese troops is a plan which has been prepared for a long time. So in 1937, the Japanese troops submitted to military plans on attacking China, including the Wanping city. At the same time, and there is a rumor, there has been a story in the Japanese political arena that there was going to be an attack in the Chinese cities. So there were many symbols showing that it was a planned attack. So the outbreak of the July 7th event, was there any symbol about the event? Well, before the July 7th, you can see on this map, on the north of Wanping City, there was a military base of the Japanese troops, and for military coup, military drill. Is this photo taken by the Japanese troops using the flight, the bird's view? Yes. Well, if you see this map, this will show more clearly how the military, the Japanese troops, planned the attack around the Lugou Bridge to attack the surrounding areas of the Lugou Bridge. So it is important part is the north of the bridge, and also the east side, the Wanping City lying east of the Lugou Bridge. Yes, this is the Iron Bridge, the Lugou Bridge. So on the day, event day, on July 7th, what happened eventually? Well, on the day, the Japanese troops made an excuse that one of their soldiers was missing. As you can see on this map, on the east gate of to the northwest of the east gate of Wanping City, the Japanese troops claimed that one of their soldiers disappeared during the military drill. So there was a highland, which was called Dazaoyuan. The head of their troops given it another name. So that became the site for the outbreak of the July 7th event. They equipped gunfire in that area. So they bombed the office of the Wanping City's county government. So was it until July 8th that the gunfire was set? At 10 o'clock of July the 7th, the Japanese troops assembled at the east gate of Wanping City. They said one of their soldiers disappeared, so they want to check the city, to search the city. But our locals claimed that your military drill has nothing to do with our internal affairs inside the county. So we set a gunfire for self-protection, but the Japanese troops began the attack later. After the event happened, Mr. Qin Zhichun, the head of a local Chinese military troop, went to the negotiation table with the Japanese troops. While the negotiation went on, the Japanese troops assembled more military power for attack, for stronger attack on the morning of July 8th. The attack went to Huilongguan of Beijing. Well, the attack actually happened in the bridge in the beginning, right in this bridge. The fire was very strong. Well, the bridge was still how it looked in 1937, and this In front of us was the railway. Apart from the bridge, the gunfire outside the Wanping city was also very strong. So there were several sites that the gunfire was going on. The Japanese troops launched over 10 attacks to the Wanping city. Later on, the Japanese troops destroyed the Wanping city government and harmed 2 of our soldiers. So the Chinese troops thought it and appealed the people to rebel against the Japanese aggression. So during the Songhu battle, there were 2 events. One is January 28th, and another took place on August 13th. Yes, and there were millions of troops. And we rebelled against the Japanese aggression, and we won the battle. And we created a legend in rebelling against the Japanese troops. And this chapter told stories about atrocity of the Japanese troops. We could still seem to hear the cry of the babies, Chinese babies, under the Japanese aggression. You know, this place used to be used by the ordinary people. The Japanese troops destroyed not only the houses of the civilians, but also the libraries, the many famous historical sites, and our collections in the libraries. So they destroyed our cultural collections. But our victory showed to the world that we can win the fight against the Japanese aggression. Now, this part is about the atrocity committed by the Japanese troops during the August 13th incident. They killed the Chinese civilians. They took the lives of over 2,000 Chinese people at a time. You can see on this picture the destroyed part of the libraries under the gunfire of Japanese troops. And they even destroyed our temples. They used grenades and weapons to destroy the facilities and take our people's lives. So this is about the event that took place on August 13th. They committed huge atrocity of the anti-fascists.
One of the major events was the number 6 agencies who conducted massive scales of the massacre towards the Chinese nationalities. They have also developed some of the military atrocities, including there are 5 major Shanghai banks issuing some of the banknotes, which reflecting the rocketing inflation in Shanghai. They are using the economic method to make sure that the local people is tired of this economic constraint. They have also implemented the slavery development, which actually they only limits the teaching of Japanese instead of Chinese to the local school children. And in Shanghai, we are one of the cities which has suffered from the scar of the comforting women. They have also conducted other atrocities to the slaves that they have caught for the Western countries. and Shanghai as a major stronghold of the Chinese resistance against the Japanese aggression. We have also, here this is the Battle of Bashan. Bashan is one of the major battlefields during the Songhu battle, and here in the area of Bashan, the Bashan is located at the gateway to the Yangtze River. It is also very easy for the Shanghai Japanese troops stationed in Shanghai to enter. This is a very important gateway for the Japanese troops to invade in Shanghai. Shanghai is also located at the cross point of the transportation. It is being connected by the Songhu Railway, transporting citizens to Jiangsu and also the Nanjing direction, which is the hinterland of Shanghai. In 1937, after the outbreak of Lugou Bridge incidents, on August the 13th, the Chinese citizens, under the leadership of the CPC Central Committee, is actually fighting against the Japanese aggression. During the Songhu battle, we have thrown around 750,000 people in China on the battlegrounds of the Songhu area. We have also facilitated ourselves with the Air Force, the armies, and also the navies. After 3 months of the bloodshed, we have shattered the Japanese dream of conquering China with 3 months. And here we have a very important story, which is what we called the bloodshed in the Bashan city. So here we have our hero Yao Zhiqing, who have sacrificed his life at the age of 28 years old. Chairman Mao Zedong has renowned him as a great spirit for our nation. He is also listed at top 100 heroes of the Chinese resistance against the Japanese aggression. So, intended to occupy the Bashan city, the Japanese troops actually bombarded the Bashan city, turning the city into a fire ground. This is General Xie Jingyuan, who had led a team of 800 heroes. They have fought in the Bashan warehouse for 8 days, day after night. Although this is a small warehouse, it has a lot of political implications. It is a warehouse stationed on side of the terrains, and this battle is actually sending a message across the nation and even across the world. We are determined to defend our land inch by inch. After 3 months of the Songhu battle, we sacrificed a lot of lives, and also both from the Kuomintang, the Communist Party, as well as our civilians. Not only in the Bashan area, we also have these guerrillas in the Jiaoxian. So here we are showing you an image from the Luwei Dam. Our guerrillas is fighting against the Japanese invasion in this area, in this ways. And this is actually the boat that has been taken by the guerrillas, because this is actually the original bicycle that has been taken by the soldiers. Bicycle was a major important way of transportation since it can send the messages. This is a bicycle originated from the 1938. The local people's fight is actually a major add-up on the new four forces. And this is the local people also have the Kuomintang and also the Communist Party of China to transport the information. So the guerrilla is also the guerrilla fighting is also a very important feature during the battle. And among the locals, there are so many military troops. So here we have an interactive facility mimicking what was happened at that time. You can hear the sirens. Imagine you are a civilian living in that period, and you can hear and feel the Japanese aircraft passing your window. The bombardment occurred outside of your window. This is going to make our children have a feeling toward what happened at that time. This is something that we can only read in our historic book. It is a very heartbreaking and nerve-wracking experience, and this is what we are trying. This is what we are trying to mimic the external environment. This is also an important battle, the Battle of Luodian. Once we entered into this room, you will feel the battleground happening at your foot. Soldiers crossing each other and helping each other in the battleground. This is an immersive experience that we have built in the historic museum. The Battle of Luodian has a lot of strategic experience because the area of Luodian is a vast plain. So, because of these geographical features, it is easy to occur, but difficult to maintain. The Japanese troops might occupy this area during the daytime, but our troops is going to fight it back during the night times. In the Battle of Shanghai, we call it, this is the real area where the blood is covered every inch of the ground. Finally, we are going to see a sculpture representing the spirit of the guerrilla fighters, and they are fighting, and they are actually fighting with their knives and also their guns with the Japanese aggression. We are feeling the spirit from this. This spirit can be given to us because of these sculptures. The heroes has shed their blood and spent their lives for the safety of our nation. The fourth chapter of this story is about the national effort against the Japanese aggression. Shanghai as a major stronghold during the war against the Japanese aggression, we have promoted to build a unified collaboration between the Kuomintang and the Communist Party of China. Shanghai is also a witness to this historic moment where the two parties joined hands to fight against this important stage. This is a photo introducing Premier Zhou Enlai's efforts to persuading the Kuomintang to join the forces. There was an underground meeting in the Shanghai hotel, where during this meeting, and he talks about how to fight collaboratively with the Kuomintang. There are a lot of patriotic forces hidden in Shanghai. It is a meeting about how should we mobilize them to build a unified front against the Japanese aggression. In Shanghai, we have also rebuilt our party organization. We have built the Balu, a military grade. This has been stationed in the Yan'an Middle Route. Shanghai is a major stage to demonstrate our national joint effort against the Japanese aggression. Shanghai used to be a city with multiple cultures and diverse people from the diverse regions across China. But in this area, in this photo, we are seeing that the religious forces, as well as the special forces of women, and also the medical forces, fighting at the forefront of this battle. All of the workforces are united to fight against the Japanese aggression. After 3 months of a long effort, we have involved the human powers, the human resources, military resources, and also the universities have been moved into the inland to prepare for a long-term battle. And we also have some of the overseas Chinese donate their money and resources to Shanghai to make sure the logistic supply of this battle. Here, this is a photo where we called the Yide Pharmacy. You must see a movie which is called the Battle in Number 51. This marks a very important beginning for the battle in all kinds of resources. This pharmacy was located in Wusong. It is a pharmacy where the local Chinese troops can collect the information about the Japanese troops. And through the waterways in the Yangtze River, we transferred the military resources to the background. And also, this is Mr. Xu Guozhang, the then head of the information office. You must see the movie which is called the Electric Waves That Never Dies. It is a movie that talks about the underground parties which has joined their hands and stationed in the Hongkou district of Shanghai, sending the information to Yan'an. This is Madam Molly Ying. She have also participated in the war of resistance against the Japanese. She died fearlessly in front of the Japanese troops, aged 38. This is her clothes. So this marks that no matter whether you were a woman, man, young or old, you were participating in this war against the Japanese aggression. This is a special facility that we have made. And if you are looking at it from the front, you are going to see the Chinese characters of the war. It's from the other side, you will see this Chinese character of 14, which marks the 14 years effort during the war against the Japanese aggression. On top of the ceiling, we have also raised 5 characteristics, where we have copied from the August 1st Declaration, fighting for the nation and also fighting for the country.
To fight for the territorial integrity and fight for the freedom of the nationality. So they used the bullets to build the Chinese character war. We used 8 real bullets evacuated from local, but other bullets were not, because Bashan used to be the main battlefield. So this section displays the stories full-scale anti-aggression. Thank you,
好的，
Mr.
谢谢马
Ma.
馆长给我们的
Thank you,
讲
Mr.
解。谢谢
Tang.
唐馆长给我们的讲解。接下来呢，我
Next,
们也要
We'd
去
like to
了解一
learn
下上海作
stories
为一个抗
about
战文化的
Shanghai
这个
as
基
an
地哈，
important
它的这一段
battlefield
抗战文化的发祥地，
and
它是
how
怎么样
the
来
culture of
发扬。然后
anti-aggression
我
develops
们有
from
请对这
the
一段历史
region.
特别了解的我们的马
And
教
it's
授，
a
马教授
pleasure to
来跟我
have
们
with
央视
us
新闻的网友
Mr.
打个招呼。
Professor Ma
各位大家好，
from
我是上海社
the
会科学院
Historical
历史
Research
研究所
Institute
马
from
军。
Shanghai
欢迎马教授。
Academy
马教授，
of
我们一进到
Historic
这个
and
展厅
Art.
就可以看到这样一个雕塑，
So
它
what
是有
is
一
the
个什么样
meaning
的寓
of
意？
this
你们看，我们这是一个
art
这个
piece?
造型艺术，
Well,
金
it is
属做的，它是在这
for
个淞沪纪念馆新馆建
the
的时候
shape
做的。 你看，从这里角度
display.
可以看
You
得出
can
来，它是一
see
个人的手
the shape
拿
of
着一支笔，
human's
笔
hand
就是一个文化创造，
holding a pen
这就表明我们在这个
to
抗
show
战中
that
啊，这个文
during the
化这个起
aggression,
到了非常重要的作用。
anti-aggression war,
意义就在这里。
对，
culture
象征着
is
就
an
是用文
important
化的这个
spiritual
精神的
weapon
武器来
against
宣扬我
aggression.
们抗战的精神。
We
我们
know
也知道
that
上海
Shanghai
其
is
实汇聚了
home
非常
to
多的文
many
化名人，好像
cultural
在这里我们看
literates,
到
including
鲁迅啊、莫泊呀，他们为
Lu
什么
Xun.
都会汇集到上海这个地方？
因为我
Why
们
so
知道
many
就是
famous
鸦片战争
literates
以后啊
assembled in
上海开
Shanghai?
埠了，上海迅速
You know,
从一
after
个
the
几十万
outbreak
人的
of
城
war,
市啊，迅速发
Shanghai
展成就是600万人、
has
500-600万人
turned
的大
from
城
a
市。
small-scale
那么它这个
city
发展当中
into
啊，
a city
有
with
成为
a
一个金
huge
融中心、
population, turned
经济
into
中
the
心、
hub
工
of
业中心，同时它
finance,
也成为了一个
culture,
文化中心。
and
所以说，上海在
of China.
30年代啊，
So
其实凝聚了
it also
全国的
is
一
the
半的出版业。
industry center of China.
还有各种各样的
So
文化
different
形
forms
式
of
在上海都
culture
有。那么这
took
些人
place
啊
in
在30年
Shanghai.
代
For
比如说鲁迅先
example,
生、郭沫若先生、
田汉、瞿秋白、
瞿秋
郭沫
白
若、冼星
夏
海。
以安、冼星海，都
To
是在
name
那
a
个时代
few,
在中国
these
是
are
赫
the
赫有名的文
famous
化人。
在今天的这个时代，
cultural
也是耳
leaders
熟能详的。
对，
and
是啊都是
pioneers
顶级人物。
in
然后他们
Shanghai.
都在上海，开
And
展
they
这个
carried
文化活
out
动，特别是救亡活动。
a number
特别
of
是从
cultural
31年
activities
9·18到1937年8·13这个
from
这个阶段，他们做
1937
了
to
大量的
1938. They made a huge
一
contribution
个重要的
in
就
the
是出版界
publishing
出版了大
sector
量的
to appeal
呼吁抗战
to the
全民
Chinese
觉醒
people
的那个。比如说我们看啊，
and
这里有
to
个
raise their
自救战
awareness on
自
the
救战是毛泽东
anti-aggression.
同志在38年写的，但是同时呢，就在上海就有他的这个。
For example, this is a printed copy of Mao Zedong's work on the anti-aggression. So the cultural sector appealed closely to the
面这样的
aggression,
这个后面有什
anti-aggression.
么？
这个在文
So
化抗
during
战的
the
这个过程
anti-aggression
中啊，我们
efforts
知道
in the
这个
cultural
戏剧抗战
sector,
也是个重要的内容，是吧？左联
the
影响
theater
上
is
海
also
巨兽。大家可
important
以看这里
field.
有一个叫上海救
For
亡
example,
演剧第5
this
队。
art piece,
那么这个当时是
it
一系
says
列
we
的
must
这
work
个
together to fight against the
演剧
troops.
抗战的一个
And
团体
this
之一。
is
这
an
个团体当
important
中啊，
group
有一个
of
成
the
员叫
theater
颜
sector.
颜色的颜，1、2、30的1，然后那个烟火
And
的烟，他是
the
这个剧团的一
playwright
个编剧。
of this
他在
play
37年的时候啊，38
when
年的左右，他
planned
要到
to
延
go
安去，
to 延
所以为
安.
了送
So
这
the
个剧团就送
theater
了这个东西，就是生死同心，鼓励他到延
presented
安
this
继
as a
续
gift
革命
to
斗
the
争。
playwright
同心，我们看
延很有
to
名。
say that
他
they
呢后来
they stay
创作一个
united
著名的剧
in
本
the
就叫
anti-aggression.
八女投江。
And there was a
啊，这
play
个就反映这个
about
东北抗日
8
的
female
战士8
soldiers
个人宁死也不愿意被日
being
本俘
taken
虏。
as
后来拍
slaves
了电影
and
叫《中华
but
儿女
they
纪念
sacrificed
日》。
themselves later.
这样的原型。
对，这个像抗战啊，全民抗战啊，直到
So
今天
until
都是
today,
研究抗
these
战史的重要史。
artifacts remain an important source of study
这个
on the
非常有意
anti-aggression
思是什
period.
么呢？我们知道，就是我们中国就是近代以来的战争啊，很少都
In
能打
modern
过1-2年，
China,
因为我们当时被说成是
few
一盘
wars
散
can
沙
make
嘛
it more
民
than
众的国
2
家意识不
years.
强，是吧？
But
但是经过这个30年
in the
代的
1930s, the
这个
Chinese
觉醒啊，
culture
中国人的爱国意识
awoke,
啊，
And the patriotism among the Chinese people grows stronger and stronger. So this show represent the spiritual level, their cultural advancement among the Chinese people. So the cultural sector did a lot to raise the awareness of the Chinese people on the anti-aggression. We also have carved paintings to show their hatred against the Japanese militarists. They made 20 wood blocks, the wood prints, and they were influenced by the Chinese literati Lu Xun. They reprinted 4 times because it really sold well. And this is the number 7 item of the memorial collections. And on the wood, in this museum, we have another special room for displaying the wood prints. You can also see the cartoons and other art forms to show our cultural support in the anti-aggression efforts. And you can see this. There was a film called The Sons and Daughters in the War. And the hero and heroines led a negative mood towards life. But one of their friends sacrificed in the war. And the peak of this film was that everyone rose up to sing the national anthem of the New China. And this film was drafted in Japan by the author. So the line, there were many famous lines like we should stand up and shoulder our responsibilities to save our nation, things like that. In the music spectrum, we also made efforts. There was a famous Chinese music album company producing many famous albums. And this album is about the anti-aggression war in September 18th, because there was a battle between China and Japan. We beat the Japanese side with 4-0. We beat down 4 of their planes. So we won the battle. And later on that day was named the Air Force Day of China. This is another film about China's anti-aggression war in 1937. The actors and actresses were very famous at the time, and the name of this film is about the crossroad. The total story about how how upset the young people felt during the war period. And this film really sold well, and it was widely received among the Chinese people, as it also has some politically touching. And there was another film about a family, about their life during the 8 years after the August 13th event. It was very famous Why was that? Because it was the best-selling film during that time, because it told a story about an era through the life of an ordinary family. In the current sense, the director at the time was top-notch, and the actress and actors were also did an excellent performance. Their performing arts were really fantastic. So can we still watch this film online? Yes. We can access this film, and this film was quite long. It lasts 3 to 4 hours. Yes, it has 2 sections, so it was quite long. I think it is worth watching, not only especially for the young people, for us to learn more about the stories during that period. And this is a play about the Lugou Bridge incident. I think there are many followers of the plays and the theaters. Yes, the cultural sector can display people's life through every way. And at that time, we established an association for saving the whole country. There were more than one association. So these associations were also the carriers of culture to appeal to our people, to raise their awareness on the national independence. So they are spiritual weapons. Again, back to this art item. Just now, from another angle, we saw it was a pen, but from this angle, it looks like a gun. So, the pen, in a cultural sense, also acts as a gun to show that the people working in the cultural sector also fight against the Japanese aggression in their own way. So the victory of the war is a result of the joint efforts. Thank you for your introduction. Maybe this is the end of our live stream in the Shanghai part. We learned a lot about the stories during that period through the cultural items. We learned how difficult that period was and how people suffered during that time. We also learned how Lu Xun, Guo Moruo, and other famous literates stay united in fighting against the aggression in the cultural sector. So we need to cherish our life and the peace. Although the hatred should become, but the history should never be forgotten. If you are interested in this part of history, welcome to this museum. Now stay tuned on this documentary. See you.
那接下来呢，请继续关注我们央视新闻7.7事变85周年的特别节目。今天的直播就到这里，谢谢。
I am here at the Nanjing Massacre Museum, and here we are at a flag-raising ceremony.
此时此刻正在进行升旗仪式，我们首先进入现场。
Dear viewers, I am with CGTN Nanjing. I am here at the Nanjing city of Jiangsu province, the Nanjing Great Massacre Museum. So here we are remarking the 85 years ago of July the 7th. The event began officially at 10 a.m. This is the first part of the ceremony, the rising of the flag and also the playing of the national anthems. The event was conducted in this square. This is a severe and also important event for the local students. Today, we are going to see 36 local students cite poems and the memorial of that part of the history.
孩子们的声音。
Here in Nanjing, we have heard a national tragedy where 35 million of the local civilians have been massacred during the war. The heroes at the time has sacrificed their lives in the protection of our nation. There are 36 students from the elementary school in Nanjing. Their age is around 9 to 12, belonging to the 3rd and 4th and 5th grades of the elementary school. Every year when we come to the Nanjing Massacre Museum, we have learned our tune by ourselves. But today, when we heard the voice from these children, we have this massive contrast, the ever-shifting history with the young and innocence of the children, the silence at the background, as well as the representations of the hope by the children. It is also a stark contrast. Today, we also have a lot of representatives from the local Nanjing citizens, representing the teachers in Nanjing, representing the citizens in Nanjing. We are going to give the floor back to what happened in this commemorative ceremony. Today's commemorative ceremony is joined by 85 representatives from different walks of life. It marks the 85 years anniversary of the Chinese nationwide resistance to the Japanese aggression. After the reciting of the poem, all of them is going to turn back and pay their tribute to the heroes and civilians sacrificed their lives during the Nanjing Massacre. The citing of the poem have been finished. Although these are the young kids, but they have participated in relevant activities in this Nanjing Massacre Memorial Museums. They were a volunteer in this museum, and this is nothing strange to them. They have been participating in these patriotic events and activities a lot. All of them has turned around, and it is the time for us to pay our tribute to the heroes and also the civilians sacrificed during the Nanjing Massacre. Now we are going to pay the tributes of the flowers to the heroes. Today it is a very sincere and very important ceremony where we are going to see the children and the young people participating in this event. So here we are going to tour you around the Nanjing Massacre Museum to show you the stark contrast of the Nanjing citizens. So we are going to be toured by Miss Wang Hui, who is the moderator for this Nanjing Massacre Museum. Every year when this important event occurred, we are going to be joined by a lot of representatives from all walks of life. So I have been introducing you some of the 37 kids, and they have been participating in these memorial museums. They are volunteers, and to our knowledge, there's a lot of young people participating in these national patriotic education and activities. The kids are a major part of the educations because the kids is going to be the future builder of our country, and they are going to be the future barriers of our national spirit. Our museum is a very important platform where we are going to see around the histories being built on generation after generations. There is around 3.6 million people in the Nanjing city where we have selected these areas, and we are going to, so in this flower tributing ceremony, not only by the children but also representatives from the all walks of life is going to put the flower on the on this platform where it is the croissant is actually representing the sacrifice of the victims. So we have prepared these flowers for the visitors. So mentioning these activities, we are going to enter into the Nanjing Massacre Museum to have a look of what happened at that time. So we are at the first leg of our journey, where we are going to have a live streaming, where we have going to have a very immersive experience about the experience. This is where we have replicated the scenario after the July the 7th incident occurred in 1937. The Japanese troops launched an all-front war against China. After the December 1937, there is around 800 Japanese troops driving around 100 tanks toward Nanjing until the December of 1937, and General Mo Huang has laid the grade of 84, number 84, to actually fight against the Japanese troops. He has sacrificed himself during this battle. And he also wrote a poem after he threw himself into the Battle of Nanjing. So he mentioned that he's not going to return alive without eliminate the Japanese aggression in the Chinese. 80 years later, through this exhibition, it has replicated what happened at that time. We have the lights, we have the electricity. We also have a lot of immersive experience. Here I also mentioned one of the major features. So there is a photo of General Yi. So this is a photo where he has taken. So because we did not find his body in the battleground after he has sacrificed himself, this is a photo that we have found in his hometown. This is the only image of General Yi. It is the national first-grade photos. And next to it, we have C certification, which is being granted by the Ministry of Civil Affairs in the Chinese government. And he was renowned as one of the national heroes. Let's move forward. I think no matter for the Nanjing local citizens or the other places in Nanjing, I think the visitors, once they have entered into this area, they are going to lower down their chin to pay their respect to the to that chapter of the history. But through the sighting of the children, I can feel that the children bears our hope, bears our for the future and also for peace. This Nanjing Massacre Museum, through a massive of activities, actually enables our citizens to participate in this event. Every time we were here, there is a lot of changes. In this memorial museum, in the year 2017, we have redecorated and renovated this museum with a scientific design, and after a lot of service to the audience, we have redesigned the tour around this museum. For each one of the block, there is each part of the journey has given you an introduction toward one chapter. We have given you a description toward the rapid massacres of Nanjing, and the massacres in Nanjing is also a very important chapter in the worldwide anti-fascist effort. So we are here at an area where the film is being played, where Mr. John Marking has taken some of the photos and documentaries back in Nanjing. And on this wall, there are some of the images recording John Marking's effort. And in this glass blocks, there is a small camera. There was a small camera where, during the Nanjing Massacre, we have used it to record the atrocity of the Japanese army. And this is actually a record Mr. John Marking has bought from the United States. And at that time, there is a lot of warnings from the embassies and requiring all the foreigners to withdraw from China. But John Marking, as one of the kind-hearted international friends, they are using their camera to shoot what happened in Nanjing, and they have helped the local Chinese citizens to provide their shelters for them. These are some of the documentaries at that year.
Well, part of the videos was shot by John Marking. And this figure is the son of, the eldest son of John Marking. And it is him that presented the video clips to, and also the camera to this museum. So we'd like to pay tribute to John Marking for preserving this very precious proof of the atrocity of Japanese troops. We can see around here there were some films. It was 15 minutes long. And it was very comprehensive in telling the historical facts about the Nanjing massacre. It was also presented as a proof and a forceful evidence in the military trial of the Japanese troops. For example, we hear many famous figures during that time. The international friends are held, are firm practitioners of international world peace. Now we're at this memorial hall of the Nanjing massacres victims. To enter this museum, we need to register first. Each year, the museum receives 8 million visitors, and the highest peak received 11 to 12 million. So it has become an important base for the patriotism education. This section is about the memory of humanity and the vision of peace. We have collected a large amount of historical items, and it was about an important historical figure, Ms. Xia Shuqin. So she is too old now to come to this place today, but we have invited her family members for taking the interview. So how is Ms. Xia? She is good and healthy. It's a pity that she cannot make it here today because the weather is because it was very hot. So on the wall we had the pictures of the whole family. It was taken in 2016 when Ms. Xia reached 87. Ms. Xia is a survivor of the Nanjing massacre. So we have collected the precious historical memories during the war. So could you please give us some information about what Ms. Xia went through? In December 1937, my grandma was having breakfast with her family members at home, and someone knocked at the door, and when we opened the door, we saw our neighbor followed by a group of Japanese troops. So the Japanese soldiers killed our family member who opened the door, and later the father and mother of my grandma, 7 family members, they killed all, and my grandma was almost killed. The Japanese troops harmed her with knives, but she survived. So after she got wounded, after a couple of days, she barely kept her life with only a bowl of water and the porridge. Later on, the Japanese troops stopped killing Chinese people, so they felt it was safer, and they dared to go out to check the surroundings. And that was how they made it out of the atrocity of the Japanese troops. So Ms. Xia Shuqin later became a witness to the atrocity of Japanese troops, and she participated in a video clip, video taking. of the anti-aggression war. Now she is too old to take the interview in person, but we have provided a holographic image of Ms. Xia, where you can ask her questions. For example, how many family members in your family, and how old were they, and what are names of your family members. With the holographic technology, we are able to communicate with Ms. Xia in this museum. So how do you feel about your grandma's story? Well, the incident there has been many years after the incident took place. We hope the Japanese troops can admit their atrocity. Well, each time when we interview Ms. Xia, I was told by Ms. Xia that our purpose is to cherish, is to memorize the history and never forget the history, and not instead of hatred. There were several other pictures hanging on this wall, taken in 1938. That was taken in 1938 when Ms. Xia was only 9. And there is a family photo. Well, to see that the whole family of Ms. Xia is good and healthy, we feel much comfort. Now we enter quite a more spacious place. There is a line on the wall reading, "Never forget the history," and we should remember the history to cherish the future.
I'm sorry, our internet has been broken because the Nanjing Massacre Museum was halfway underground. That's the reason why we have. So we are going to continue the introduction for the Nanjing Massacre Museums. So here we have an important area which is demonstrating the message to peace and development from the Chinese citizens and also a lot of citizens from across the world. In these recent years, how did you design this museum to better representing the message of spreading the hope for peace and development? I think all of the citizens, although they are coming from different countries and regions, they are expressing the same ideas. That is going to say they are going to remember the history and express their love for peace and development. This is a vast exhibition area where we are going to see a lot of communications. I think this is an important memorial wall where people's message has been imprinted. Every time, every people tour around this memorial wall, I think a lot of area has been left to our audiences and also for the visitors. I hope that a lot of them could participate in these areas. The history is not going to be altered, but our museum is always refresh and renovate itself. Here we have left some of the notebooks for the visitors to left their messages. Every day we renew the messages. As I have mentioned, history is unaltered, but the museum can be altered and refreshed. For today's interview, at the beginning, I understand at 8:30 every morning, the 12 visitors which have entered the museum first is going to ring the bell in the middle of the square, which is helping all of them to remember December the 13th, which is the starting day of the Nanjing Massacre. In the recent years, a lot of children in school, a lot of old citizens has been participating in this as a volunteer for the Nanjing Massacre Museum. This is going to enlarge a lot of social participations. And this book note, as well as other messages, actually helps us to understand this part of the history. Dear viewers, we are here at the Nanjing Massacre Museum to live streaming this content. We are going to wrap up today's live stream. Let's cherish peace, remember history, and open up to the future. Dear viewers, I am here at the September 18th Historic Museum. Here we are replaying a lot of messages. This is what we call immersive experience from the historic museum. From the sites, we are going to relive the history of the September the 18th. We welcome a lot of Shenyang citizens as one and the only historic museum memorizing the 14 years Chinese people's fight against the Japanese invasion, as well as the September the 18th incident happened in Shenyang. A lot of citizens who choose to go to this museum and relive the history at that time. To better let you understand the September the 18th Historic Museum, we are going to invite one of the curators, Madam Hu, to tour us around the September 18th Museum. Please say hello to our viewer. I am the curator Hu Yue. I'd like to introduce you this museum. I think we have added a lot with the new media technologies in this museum. And today, this technology is not limited here. The September 18th Museum, in 2012, it has been closed for an all-out renovation. we added a lot of features and built a lot of new features inside, where we added these immersive experiences at 12 different sites. One is 100% whole immersive experience. This is going to make the people feel that they are at the sites. So while we are demonstrating this scenario, currently, in this memorial, they are representing the different and similar features. And this immersive experience actually let us understand that after we entered into this museum, there is 1 minute scenario demonstration where it has given us a record toward the upstart of the September 18th. Chinese people's effort against the Japanese aggression and also the great leadership of the Communist Party of China. This year marks the 85 years anniversary for the all-untitled Chinese fight against the Japanese invasion. Starting from July, across the nation, there is a series of activities. And starting from July the 1st, the Shenyang September 18th Museum has welcomed 60,000 visitors. And for these visitors, they are enriching themselves. No matter from the automatic, from some of the audiences by themselves, and there are some of the students groups, as well as groups from other parts of this country. We are actually heading toward the September 18th Historic Museum, bringing us a whole experience. So let's work inside of this museum to have a hands-on experience toward this museum. For the viewers who is sitting in front of the television, we are going to give you an introduction toward this chapter of the history. In this 500 meters of the demonstration area, we have elongated it into an 800-meter demonstration area. The September 18th Historic Museum was built in 1991. It is a museum reflecting the September 18th incident. In 2021, the Historic Museum has been renovated comprehensively. This is actually the first time of comprehensive renovation after 20 years. We have used over 100 days to renovate this historic museum and demonstrating you these new features. There are 5 chambers of this museum representing the Communist Party's efforts in the fight of the Chinese people against the Japanese invasion. We have also added a lot of details and photos, as well as the cultural relics, among which there are 70 pieces belongs to the national first-grade cultural relics. And inside of this exhibition area, we have introduced and renovated 12 different sites. And these sites is interactive sites. I think from this picture, you can see that the reliving and refurnishing of these sites. I think a lot of viewers might see the commanding areas. This is actually after the outbreak of the September 18th. The Northeast armies has been stationed in this area. This is actually the gate of the headquarters for the Chinese army at that period. So working through this gate, it is going to give you a feeling that you are working into the Chinese army at that time. You are going to have an experience toward the history and relive the history at that time. It is quite complicated. After you have entered into here, you are going to feel that you have worked back into the history and entered into that chapter of the history. I think we are seeing this immersive immersive experience demonstrating the night where the September 18th incident occurred, the armies and also the Chinese troops stationed in the northeast part of China fired the first gunfire against the Japanese invasion. While we have entered into this exhibition area, it is playing one of the home-known national songs about the Songhuajiang River, where our spirit has been ignited. So here we are seeing the local people's feature after the September 18th incident. They have to leave their home and migrate to the hinterland of China. Although this part of China has been scarred deeply by the wars, but the spirit has been imprinted in the Chinese people. I think after we have finished entering into this gate, we are going to move into the next gate. In order to build this picture more vividly, we are going to enter into the second part of this demonstration. We are tooling around the September 18th Museum. I think that we have worked back into the September 18th Museum. So here, we can see it quite clearly. When we are displaying the museum, we have added a lot of literature. We are going to feel this, relive the history in this museum. Actually, when we have had it in front of this demonstration closet, there is a lot of Japanese issued currency, and this currencies has witnessed that chapter of the history. And in these currencies, it had demonstrated the rising and rocketing inflation featured by the Japanese, triggered by the Japanese troops. So I'm going to invite one of the historians to join us through today's live streaming. Dear viewers with CGTN, I am actually to you around in the September 18th Historic Museum in the city of Shenyang. Next to me, it is our historian, Mr. Liu. So, Mr. Liu, I think we have mentioned a lot of literatures as well as the materials introducing us the historical background. I understand that you have donated a lot of historic materials. I have donated for 28 times for around 100 pieces of the historic relics. You have a long bonding ties with this museum since the building of this museum. This is a museum which was built in 1991. I was living nearby, and all of my family were local Shenyang people. And one of my family members has actually fought in the Fengxian battle. You understand the history of the September 18th. Why do you have such an interest to collect a lot of background background materials for this war? I think when we were celebrating the 15 years anniversary of the Chinese people's fight against the Japanese aggression, I have made my determination that is going to say I am going to collect as much as documents and materials and historic relics as I could. As we have mentioned, after the 2021st, we added a lot of pieces to the September 18th museum. A lot of them is being contributed by historian Hu, right? We are seeing a lot of currencies at that time. So what impresses you most? Are there any other relics that impresses you?
So Mr. Jiang donated a large amount of cultural relics to this museum. During the opening of this museum, he donated the number one ticket, the entrance ticket of this museum that was really precious with memorial value. For some historical materials, we need to collect them. It's very urgent work to collect all these historical materials. So what is your consideration for donating the entrance ticket? Because I am the first audience, a visitor to this museum, I think that it was very important to pass down the memory, and so I took out the entrance ticket to give it to the museum for the preservation of the history. So this is a cultural scene of the September 18th event, and this is the forest of the northeast China when the Chinese soldiers fought so hard with the Japanese troops. It was very cold. The temperature was as low as 40 degrees Celsius below zero. So the soldiers suffered a lot. And now their image and their act has become an important part of the Chinese treasure for the anti-aggression war. And it is playing a very important role in promoting the national rejuvenation and carrying on with the historical memory. So this is a really impressive historic scene below our feet. When we step on the ground, when we walk, we leave footprints. It was like we walk on the history. Walk on the page of history. It symbolizes a connection of the past and the future. It's like carrying on the historical memory. So we move head on. During no matter for the outbreak of the war in September 18th, or the current moment, we need to carry on with this strength to fight hard for the national rejuvenation. So today, this historic Mr. Zhang also took with him another historical material. This material showed the map of the marching of the Japanese troops during the September 18th event. It showed how they marched towards the suburbs of Wanping County and how they distributed their military forces surrounding the Wanping County. So this served as a very strong evidence. It is an iron evidence to Japanese troops' atrocity in the Chinese cities. And this year is very important. It marks the 85th year of the outbreak of the full-scale anti-aggression war against the Japanese aggression. So it is important to memorize the history and cherish peace. Yes, I second your point. I think peace is precious. The young children should cherish peace and cherish the good days that their ancestors fought hard for them. We must pay tribute to the heroes and our ancestors and cherish the happy life that we enjoy at hand. So the July 7th, here we are at the 5th exhibition hall. It showed how the Chinese soldiers fought against the Japanese aggression in northeast China, and it marked the official outbreak of the full-scale anti-aggression war. So the Chinese soldiers fought so hard under the strong leadership of the Chinese troops. We can check the photos on this wall. The 29th Army of the Japanese troops were marching along the Chinese land. And on July 7th, the Japanese troops created an excuse for launching an attack to the Wanping County. So these pictures show to the world the atrocity of the Japanese troops and urged us and encouraged us to cherish peace and never forget history. Here, we also collected some precious historical facts and the badges, medals from the Japanese troops. And they are a very strong historical evidence to the atrocity of the Japanese troops. So the military medals of the Japanese troops, you have collected some of them. Yes, I have collected some, and over 10,000 pieces across the past 30 years. And from 1935 to 1937 to 1945, during the war period, we published lots of comics, cartoons, and books. And the strongest evidence to the Japanese troops' aggression is the medals. So what is the difficulty in collecting these medals and these historical facts? Well, the most difficult part is that these historical materials were scattered among the local people. For example, some were hidden in the walls of the civilians. So it is very important to rescue and collect these historical materials and utilize them in a better way. And the purpose is to display these historical materials to the public and educate the young people. Well, I have donated over 300 pieces of historical materials. I have donated many to this museum of the Lugou Bridge attack. So you are not fighting alone. You have a team, right? And your act has motivated more people to follow suit. Yes, I have seen many more people joining this area, and they keep donating the historical materials, and their acts have made a difference. So what is your future plan? Well, as early as 2001, I promised to the public that as long as I'm alive, I will make my collections public and transparent, and I will keep donating my collections to society. So I will keep meeting my promises. Well, thank you very much for sharing with us your collections and stories behind. And it is an emotional bond between you and the public, and I hope your act will encourage more people to be educated and learn about history and cherish the moment. Thank you again. Well, this exhibition hall demonstrates the historical facts in the East battlefield. Well, 11 army troops were reformed into 31 during the whole war period. In the autumn of 1940, the Chinese army suffered a big attack. So they went to the former Soviet Union for help. And they came back to Northeast China and searched for the historical materials of the Japanese aggression to prepare for a counterattack to the Japanese troops. Well, in this section, we demonstrated some daily products and the weapons of the Japanese troops, the guns, the machetes used by the Japanese soldiers, and also the shoes they wore, and also other daily necessities. From our naked eyes, it is difficult to march along the land wearing these shoes. But these shoes kept them warm. From these exhibitions, it is not difficult to find that the Chinese armies used very poor facilities and the materials. The Chinese armies in the northeast China battlefield led a hard life. Yet they fought the Japanese aggression so hard, and they won the victory, and they led to the victory of the Chinese people. over Japan. So after 14 years of suffering and the anti-aggression efforts, the Chinese people paid a huge price, and we've hit the Japanese troops hard. During the war, the Chinese people, 35 million people's lives were taken, and over 100 billion yuan of economic loss was incurred. But we have made a huge contribution to the anti-fascist war. So from these historical figures, we can read out the emotional feelings behind the historic page. The Chinese people fought hard, and they have laid a solid foundation for the well-being and peace of the generations to come. And we believe and we are confident that the Chinese nation will enjoy an even brighter future. So this museum holds the principle of recalling the history and telling facts. The museum has carried out lots of studies on the history and to let the history speak for itself. And we use facts to speak for ourselves. Now, this year marks the 85th anniversary of the outbreak, or the full-scale outbreak of the anti-Japanese aggression war. And we are holding this special program to commemorate this war. And in front of us, you can see a simulated scene of the Supreme Court held.
Emperor Puyi attended at the court to allege these Japanese war criminals. At that time, we have conducted some of the humanitarian renovation of these war criminals. We did not charge the death penalties against each one of them. To the longest, they suffered 20 years penalties, and to the shortest, they have the 12-year sentence. And this has drawn a very good conclusion towards this aggression. So I think every single criminal behavior has to be sentenced in front of the history. Today we are here at the September 18th Historic Museum, and this is actually the biggest visit to this historic museum since the year 2012. And we hope that all the viewers could draw the spirits, and we can also feel the energies. I am actually looking forward to invite all the visitors to join the museum and have a feeling toward it. So here we are actually at the sixth chapter of the museum, where we are calling for the cherish of the peace and development. After the Second World War, the international sentence, as well as the sentencing from the Chinese government, have been continued. Although the war had been ended, we still need to remember this chapter of the history. We have standing in front of this painting, which is revealing us the liberation of the city of Shenyang, where the citizens of Shenyang has been walked toward the streets, and they have seen this happy smile on this face, and also their facial complexion is demonstrating their long-term cherish for the hope and the future. Today we have stepped into the September 18th Historic Museum, where we have an experience toward the happiness of the history. We are also standing upon that. We are looking forward for the future with peace and development. We hope more and more of you could join us in this historic museum to feel the happiness in the history and cherish this chapter of the history. We are going to wrap up today's visit into this museum. We also want to thank Curator Hu for your time with us. We are here at the live streaming of CGTN News. We are at the September the 18th museum, and we are looking forward that a lot of netizens could join this September 18th museum by yourselves offline, and we are going to see you later.
真爱和平。那今天我们的直播到这里呢，就先跟大家说再见了。让我们关注央视新闻客户端后续的直播内容。
Dear viewers with CGTN, so here I am at the Harbin city of Heilongjiang province. I'm here at the Martyrs Museum. I am going to walk you through this Martyrs Museum and let all of you to relive the history where the war of resistance against Japanese aggression occurred. So the Dongbei Martyrs Museum is located in the Yiman route, and Yiman is the name of one of our national heroines who sacrificed her life in this battle. And there is a lot of road names, which were the name of our heroes and heroines. And through this local name, you are going to have understanding the city's imprinted memory of the war of resistance against the Japanese invasion. Today, we are going to hold a short-term memorial event. Let's walk into this museum.
纪念活动即将开始，下面就让我们跟随镜头走进纪念馆来看一看。
Dear viewers and dear visitors, this year marks the 101 years anniversary of the founding of CPC, and here we are also celebrating we are memorizing the 18th 5-year anniversary of the Chinese People's War of Resistance against the Japanese aggression. We are going to enter into the first part of today's agenda to pay the flower tributes to the sculpture of our heroes and heroines. The second item of today's agenda, please all rise up and pay the silence tribute. The third item on the agenda, we are going to appreciate the Lugou Bridges incident. The Lugou Bridge, also known as the Marco Polo Bridge, is a celebration of the master faith and the Chinese ancient craftsmanship, but it is also one of the Scots' memory imprinted in the Chinese history. As one of the famous images in the Lugou Bridge, where the moon is rising from the bridge on the Mid-Autumn Festival, one of the blood has shaded on the Lugou Bridge. It marks 85 years ago, it marks the beginning of the Chinese people's war of resistance against Japanese aggression. On July 7, 1937, the Japanese troops attacked the Lugou Bridge under an excuse of a lost Japanese soldier. We are hearing the reciting of the poem, but it is also reflecting that unburying chapter of the history. Let's move into this museum to cherish the history of the martyrs and that 40 years of Chinese people's unswerving spirit against Japanese aggression. Today we have with us Madam Tan Rui. So please say hello to our viewers. So I am from the Dongbei Martyrs Museum. I am going to give you a brief introduction toward our Northeast Martyrs Museum. So let me introduce you the general background information for this Martyr Museum. This is a museum opened up in 1948. It is a museum which was built before the founding of People's Republic of China by the Communist Party of China. This building has been renovated in 1928. This is a building originally designed as the laboratory for the Heilongjiang province. At the beginning of, after the building was founded, the September 18th incident occurred, and also our famous national heroine Zhao Yiman has stationed under this building. So let's walk into this museum. The first chapter of this museum is about what happened. Is actually the noble spirits bred by the black soil. The Chinese people's war of resistance against the Japanese aggression has been lasted for over 14 years. Within a short 40 days, across 108 square kilometers of the land, there is a lot of things occurred. The Communist Party of China is actually representing the interest of the national spirit and the national interest of China. This is actually a vivid reflection of that chapter of the history. We are walking into this museum as we are seeing the comrade Luo Dongxian, who is one of the major leaders of the Communist Party's division in the northeast part of China. He has said, the Communist Party of China, as well as our people, is going to live together and fight together with the people in the northeast part of China. Wherever our enemy is, we are going to fight against them. This is some of his own commitment toward this black soil. We mentioned about the joint forces in the north east part of China. This has been developed through 3 stages. The first stage is creating the guerrilla forces. The second stage is building a joint force between the Communist Party of China and also the Kuomintang Party. Madam Zhang Yiman used to be the political director of the Northeast Force in China. She is one of the greatest members of the Communist Party of China. After the war broke out, she left her husband and her son, threw herself into this battle, and this is the only picture that she has taken with her son. At the year 1938, she separated her son and never see her son again. She led the war against the Japanese, and she was captured by the Japanese army in 1935. And we understand the history of this building has been actually occupied by the Japanese troops. And actually, at the underground of this building, where the heroinist Zhao Yiman has spent the last few days of her life. Actually, through this image, we are going to relive her lives. Although 85 years has been passed on, but when we entered into these prison cells, we can feel the chilliness of the building. And after the threats of the Japanese troops, Madam Zhao Yiman did not give in.
Zhao Yiman kept saying that her purpose, her vision, was to fight against the aggression of the Japanese troops. Until her last moment, she would stay committed to this vision. And she was brought to a place for execution. The Japanese troops took her to the train heading to Zhuhe. And this is a model scene of the train that took her to the execution site, where she wrote a famous letter. After she stepped onto the train, she knew her fate, and she asked for a pen and a piece of paper from her son to writing a letter to her son. And she said, "Never forget why your mother sacrificed for," and she sacrificed her life for the nation, for the people. And this was a letter not only to her son, but also to every civilian on this land. And when her son grew up, he also visited this museum, and he copied manually the letter from his mother. And he stepped on his arm the Chinese character name of his mother. And the government also donated some allowance to Zhao Yiman's family, but the family refused because they said his mother sacrificed for the country. They don't need any allowance. So Zhao Yiman was a real martyr during the war period. Just now we said the war went through 3 periods. Now we are entering the 3rd one. So during the 3rd period, the troops expanded in the northeast China. This war sustained for 14 years. The reason for sustaining the war and winning the war is that the perseverance from the Chinese people, especially the Chinese army. And for the troops, each Chinese troop included over 30 people. And aroused from them some generals played an important role. And among them, it was the General Yang Jingyu. This is a statue for the martyr Yang Jingyu, and this is the highest statue in this museum. It was 4.5 meters high to pay tribute to this martyr and to honor his spirit. And today we are commemorating the 85th anniversary of the full-scale anti-fascist Japanese aggression. And a ceremony was going on here in the exhibition hall, and the young students were paying tribute to General Yang Jingyu. And this is the largest bronze statue in this museum. Sorry to interrupt. We noticed that the young students, the pupils, are here to memorize history. So can I interview one of the students? How do you feel about this event? When I come to this museum and I learned about the stories of the General Yang Jingyu, I feel he is really a hero. He is such a great marvel. His spirit encouraged us to follow suit. The spirit of the martyr is worth learning. So we must learn his spirit and carry on his examples. So can I interview the teacher? So what is the meaning of holding this event among the pupils? Well, on such a special day, we hold such a memorial service. It is for the students to learn from history and cherish their life and try to be heroes, lesser heroes in their own lives. So enjoy your event. And we will go on with our live stream. We talked about General Yang Jingyu. In front of us is the personal items of the general. And this is the quilt of the General Yang. And during that period, he did not make his title open. So he had a small earning, and that was barely enough to cover his daily spending. So in his room, he had barely nothing to keep himself warm except this quilt. You can see this personal item that he used to keep himself warm during the cold winter in northeast China. And that is how he suffered from the long winter. Although he suffered a lot, he never asked for help from the organization, from his upper level. And after that, he even donated, he even pawned his quilt. So his act really practiced the spirit of sacrificing himself for the country, and he led an army to fight the Japanese troops until 1940, and he died in February 20th. Before his death, he didn't eat anything. He hadn't eaten anything for 5 days. And it was surprising for Japanese troops to find a saving for over 600 RMB in his personal items. As a member of the Communist Party, he did not spend a cent from the money given by the upper level. So he led a very hard life. In front of us is another statue of a group of heroes. every time when we meet such statues, I will ask the audience, if there were 400 people in the enemy and only 16 in our troops, do you ever think we can win this battle? There were only 16 soldiers in the anti-aggression war. Although we have a small number, we fought hard. We fought the enemy hard. And the soldiers sacrificed themselves. So later, the local government decided to name them as heroes and martyrs. You know, when our people, we have such a small number of people in an army, while the enemy has such a big number of people, we still win, we still fought so hard. That means we really practiced the spirit of fighting for the country. We also have some heroines rising up in the war. There is a huge oil painting that it was very famous in China. It was about 8 heroines, 8 female soldiers. The youngest was only 23 years old. The youngest was only 13 years old when she sacrificed her life. And the eldest was only 23. The 8 female soldiers gave up their lives for the country and the people. So during the anti-aggression period, our soldiers kept fighting on and on, fighting on this black soil. They made a huge sacrifice and also indelible contribution to the victory of the war. So the Northeast Chinese Joint Aggression Troops played an important role in the national victory. And later on, we had a hard time. We had little to eat. Yet we stayed optimistic and fought on. So today is a very special day for commemorating these events. We have prepared a small video clip to unveil the history. In front of us, we have a collection of songs, including the Chinese national anthem and also the anti-aggression war songs that were very popular among the soldiers. And there was a song wrote in 1938 when one of the soldiers wrote it during the journey of fighting the anti-aggression, of fighting the Japanese troops. So, are there any unforgettable memories behind this history? The Northeast Chinese Army led a hard life, especially in the winter season. They marched along in heavy snow that was as high as their waists, and the temperature can be as deep as low as 40 degrees Celsius below zero. So the soldiers, there was a soldier who marched into fire and later sacrificed himself despite the fact that his companions want to save him. So this story told us that the soldiers led a hard life, and yet they choose to fight with their whole life, and they never surrender and never say give up. Now we are back to the site of this exhibition hall. In 1940, after 1940, and the soldiers kept marching on. And Comrade Zhao Shangzhi was one of the leaders. He was very memorable, and he was followed by the Chinese people. And in 1940, he wrote a letter to the provincial committee of the local government. In his letter, he said the party membership is the life of each CPC member. I have been in the revolutionary caution for 15 years. Apart from Zhao Shangzhi, other soldiers also followed suit. In front of us is the gun used by Comrade Zhao Shangzhi. His personal items have been displayed here, and they told the stories about time, and they reminded us to cherish peace and cherish their outcomes.
Yes, because of the sacrifice of thousands of lives. Until the 1945, the Japanese emperor has succumbed to the result of the war and made a declaration. Although the Chinese people win the war of resistance against the Japanese aggression finally, but we are not going to forget this chapter of the history. It is also going to be the national inspiration for the great Chinese rejuvenation. We are working here in this chapter and finish the readings and also of the noble spirits on the black soil. We also want to thank Madam Han for walking us through this chapter of this building. You are demonstrating the glamorous of the heroes. So here I am kindly invite all of the viewers to come to Harbin. And I am going to tell you a lot of stories happened on the black soil. Thank you, Madam Han. Viewers with CGTN, today within 30 minutes, we walk you through one of the bloodshed scarred chapter in our history. We are here memorizing the important chapter, and I think today after we walk you through this period, we are feeling the loyalty and the commitment of the heroes to our party, to our country, and also to our people. Because of their sacrifice, we are living a peaceful life. So their story needs to be told and retold, and needs to be passed generation after generation. We believe that on this black soil, the belief and the spirits, the great cause of our nation is going to be rooted and budded and blossomed. Here we have concluded our visit to the the Northeast Massacre Museum. We are inviting all of you to have an offline experience in the Northeast Massacre Museum.
接下来，请您继续跟随央视新闻的直播镜头到吉林敦化看一看。